Cleveland, Ohio.
Table of contents, Cleveland.
All about Cleveland, with visiting and touring information, geography, history, attractions, and author points of interest.
Dr. Sidney Soclof. drsydney22@gmail.com. 2022. Narration by Dr. Sidney Soclof,
Zoe Phonemes,
and Nathan Koltove. For a more complete discussion of YouTube navigation, please go to this video using the link here. Chapter 1. Cleveland. Cleveland is a city in northeastern Ohio.
Cleveland is the county seat of Cuyahoga County, the most populous county in Ohio.
This is the flag of Cleveland. Cleveland is located in northeastern Ohio on the southern shore of Lake Erie, approximately 60 miles, 100 kilometers, west of the Pennsylvania border.
also on Lake Erie at Toledo, Ohio, Erie, Pennsylvania, and Buffalo, New York. Detroit, Michigan is just to the northwest.
Cleveland was founded in 1796 near the mouth of the Cuyahoga River, and became a manufacturing center owing to its location at the head of numerous canals and railroad lines. Native Americans called this winding water Cuyahoga, which means crooked river in the Iroquois language. With the decline of heavy manufacturing, Cleveland's businesses have diversified into the service economy, including the financial services, insurance, legal, and healthcare sectors, though the city's population has continued to decline. Cleveland is also noted for its association with rock music and is home to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and Museum is a museum located on the shores of Lake Erie in downtown Cleveland. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is dedicated to recording the history of some of the best-known and most influential artists, producers, and other people such as Alan Freed, who have in some major way influenced the music industry, particularly in the area of rock and roll. The museum is part of the city's redeveloped North Coast Harbor. As of the 2020 census, the city proper had a total population of 373,000 and was the 54th largest city in the United States, and the second largest city in Ohio after Columbus, the largest city. The third largest city in Ohio is Cincinnati.
It is the center of Greater Cleveland, the largest metropolitan area in Ohio, and spans several counties. They are Cuyahoga, Geauga, Lake, Medina, and Lorain counties. The adjacent counties of Summit and Portage have the city of Akron as their principal center. The Cleveland-Elyria Metropolitan Statistical Area ranked as the 34th largest in the United States with 2.1 million people in the 2020 census.
Cleveland is also part of the larger Cleveland-Akron-Canton Combined Statistical Area, which in 2020 had a population of 3.6 million.
These are population trends for the city of Cleveland, Cuyahoga County, and the Cleveland-Elyria Metropolitan Statistical Area from 1950 to 2000.
We see that although the city experienced a steady decline over these 50 years, The county and metropolitan area populations have not changed very much. In studies conducted by The Economist in 2005, Cleveland and Pittsburgh were ranked as the most livable cities in the United States, and the city was ranked as the best city for business meetings in the continental U.S.
and tied for 26th place worldwide.
Cleveland faces continuing challenges, in particular from concentrated poverty in some neighborhoods and difficulties in the funding and delivery of high-quality public education.
Residents of Cleveland are usually referred to as Clevelanders. Nicknames used for the city include the Forest City, the Cleve, the Land, Metropolis of the Western Reserve, the New American City, America's North Coast, Sixth City, Rock and Roll Capital of the World, because of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and Sea Town.
Chapter 2. The History of Cleveland.
Cleveland obtained its name on July 22, 1796 when surveyors of the Connecticut Land Company laid out Connecticut's Western Reserve into townships and a capital city they named Cleveland after their leader, General Moses Cleveland.
The Connecticut Western Reserve was land claimed by Connecticut in the Northwest Territory in what is now northeastern Ohio. Although forced to surrender the Pennsylvania portion, Westmoreland County, of its sea-to-sea land grant following the Yankee-Pennamite Wars and the intercession of the federal government.
Connecticut held fast to its right to the lands between the 41st and 42nd and 2' parallels that lay west of the Pennsylvania border. The Northwest Territory, formerly known as the Territory Northwest of the River Ohio, was a governmental region within the early United States.
The Northwest Ordinance, passed by the Congress of the Confederation in 1787, provided for the administration of the territories and set rules for admission as a state in 1789. The new U.S. Congress affirmed the ordinance with slight modifications under the Constitution.
The territory included all the land of the United States west of Pennsylvania and northwest of the Ohio River.
The territory covered all of the modern states of Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, and Wisconsin, as well as the northeastern part of Minnesota. The area covered more than 260,000 square miles, 673,000 square kilometers.
This shows the land claims and cessions by the states to the federal government from 1782 to 1802. Note in particular the land ceded by Connecticut in 1786, and later the Western Reserve cession by Connecticut in 1800. This is the map of the states and territories of the United States as it was on August 7, 1789. When the Northwest Territory was first organized. Within the state of Ohio, the Western Reserve claim of Connecticut was a 120-mile, 190 kilometers, strip between Lake Erie and a line just south of Youngstown, Akron, New London and Willard. About 3 miles, 5 kilometers, south of the present-day U.S. Highway 224. Beyond Ohio, the claims of Connecticut included parts of what would become Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, Iowa, Nebraska, Wyoming, Utah, Nevada, and California.
In its date of cession in which the states gave up their western claims in exchange for federal assumption of their American Revolutionary War debt of 1786. Connecticut retained more than 3 million acres, 12,000 square kilometers, in Ohio. In 1796, Connecticut sold that land to investors, initially 8 original purchasers, most of them from Suffield, Connecticut, who formed the Connecticut Land Company. However, the Indian title to the reserve had not been extinguished. Clear title was not obtained until the Greenville Treaty in 1795 and the Treaty of Fort Industry in 1805.
The west end of the reserve included the 500,000-acre, 2,000 square kilometers, firelands or sufferers' lands reserved for residents of several New England towns destroyed by British set fires during the Revolutionary War. The land company arranged for the surveying of the balance of the land into townships 5 miles, 8 kilometers, square, 25 square miles. To this day, the townships of the Western Reserve differ in size from those of most of the rest of the state, which is 6 miles, 10 kilometers, square, 36 square miles, following the guidelines of the Land Ordinance of 1785.
The name Western Reserve still lives on today in various places and institutions such as Case Western Reserve University
and the Western Reserve Historical Society.
Moses Cleveland oversaw the plan for the modern downtown area, centered on the public square, before returning home to Connecticut, never again visiting Ohio. Public Square is the central plaza in downtown Cleveland. It takes up 4 city blocks. Superior Avenue and Ontario Street cross through the middle of it.
Cleveland's 3 tallest buildings, Key Tower, the BP Tower, and the Terminal Tower, face the square. Other public square landmarks include the 1855 Old Stone Church and the former Higbee's department store, made famous in the 1983 film, A Christmas Story.
The first settler in Cleveland was Lorenzo Carte, who built a cabin on the banks of the Cuyahoga River. The village of Cleveland was incorporated on December 23, 1814.
A 125-foot monument to Civil War soldiers and sailors occupies the southeast quadrant of the public square. City founder Moses Cleveland and reformist Mayor Tom L. Johnson each have statues on the square.
Public Square was part of the Connecticut Land Company's original plan for the city, which was overseen by Moses Cleveland in the 1790s. The square is the signature of the layout for early New England towns, after which Cleveland was modeled. While it initially served as a common pasture for settlers' animals, less than a century later Public Square was at the height of modernity, when in 1879 it became the first street in the world to be lit with electric street lights. Arc lamps designed by Cleveland native Charles F. Brush. The square was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1975.
The spelling of the city's name was later changed to Cleveland when, in 1831, an A was dropped so the name could fit a newspaper's masthead. We can leave out a letter. How's this?
No, that's not good. Why don't you just leave out the A in Cleveland? Okay. This looks good. The A wasn't really needed anyway. Chapter 3. The Ohio Erie Canal.
Despite the nearby swampy lowlands and harsh winters, its waterfront location proved to be an advantage. The area began rapid growth after the 1832 completion of the Ohio and Erie Canal. This key link between the Ohio River and the Great Lakes connected the city to the Atlantic Ocean, via the Erie Canal and later via the St. Lawrence Seaway, and also the Gulf of Mexico via the Mississippi River. Growth continued with added railroad links. The Ohio and Erie Canal, connecting Lake Erie at Cleveland with the Ohio River at Portsmouth, was constructed by the state of Ohio between 1825 and 1832 to provide cheap transportation and promote the state's economic development.
The canal was a minimum of 40 feet wide at the waterline, 26 feet at the bottom, and 4 feet deep, dug by laborers using picks, shovels, and wheelbarrows, with oxen to drag heavy trees and stones. The canal opened officially between Cleveland and Akron in 1827. Built at a cost of $4.3 million. The canal was 308 miles long and required 146 lift locks. Wooden canal boats were limited by the size of the locks to 90 feet long and 15 feet wide.
Large-capacity freight boats were towed by mules in tandem and passenger packets, designed for faster travel, were towed by horses at a speed of 4 miles per hour or less.
This shows the two principal canals in Ohio connecting the Ohio River to Lake Erie. This again shows the two principal canals in Ohio connecting the Ohio River to Lake Erie.
This is a map of Cleveland and its environs in 1835 by Ahaz Merchant. Chapter 4. Vintage photographs of Cleveland.
Cleveland was incorporated as a city in 1836. In 1836, the city, then located only on the eastern banks of the Cuyahoga River, nearly erupted into open warfare with neighboring Ohio City over a bridge connecting the two. Ohio City remained an independent municipality until it was annexed by Cleveland in 1854. This is Cleveland in 1853.
This is Cleveland about 1853.
This is the Cleveland Railway Station and docks in 1854.
The public library building cost about $20,000 and was dedicated in 1856. These are the flats, an area on the banks of the Cuyahoga River as it winds its way through Cleveland before emptying into Lake Erie.
This shows a crowd gathering at the Catafalque Public Square to view the body of Abraham Lincoln on April 28, 1865.
This is a view of Cleveland from the promenade on top of the Kentucky Street Reservoir, circa 1872.
This is the public square in Cleveland, 1873.
The Superior Viaduct was proposed for improving commuting in the years following Cleveland's 1854 annexation of Ohio City.
This is the southeast quadrant of the public square, circa 1895. Cleveland flourished as a halfway point for iron ore from Minnesota shipped across the Great Lakes and other raw materials, coal, carried by rail from the south. This is the Perry Monument. This is the old Western Reserve Historical Society building.
The opening of the newly erected Euclid Avenue Opera House in 1875 provided a place of entertainment in keeping with the size and culture of modern Cleveland. The Case School of Applied Science was started on a small scale in 1881. Its first sessions were held in the Case residence on Rockwell Street, and in 1885, it was transferred to an elegant building, constructed for its use, in the East End, opposite Wade Park.
Cleveland became an important shipbuilding center on Lake Erie. This is Euclid Avenue, from Erie Street circa 1895.
The Halley Brothers Company was one of Cleveland's leading department stores, noted for its quality merchandise and service. It opened its doors in 1891 at 221 Superior Street.
Cleveland emerged as a major American manufacturing center, home to numerous major steel producers, as well as several car makers, including gasoline cars such as Peerless, Peoples, Jordan, Winton, the first car driven across the U.S., and steam car builders Watt and Geith, and the electric car company Baker. This is the Peerless Model 56 7-passenger touring car of 1917.
This is the Baker Electrica.
This is Baker's former showroom and service facility on Euclid Avenue.
This is the 1909 white touring car at the Peterson Automotive Museum. By 1920, Standard Oil founder John D. Rockefeller had made his fortune and Cleveland had become the fifth largest city in the country. This is Standard Oil Company Refinery No. 1 in Cleveland, when the city was the center of the world petroleum industry in 1889.
By 1872, Standard Oil led the American oil refining industry, producing 10,000 barrels per day.
The first oil fields were in northeastern Pennsylvania, and Cleveland was the region's major rail and lake shipping center.
The growth of major industrial centers such as Cleveland was made possible in large part by the migration of peoples of a variety of origins to provide the labor or entrepreneurial skills demanded by the changing economy.
During this area's early period of 1796 to 1830, the lack of large-scale economic opportunity provided little attraction for migration to the region.
Those who did come were largely Americans of English or British ancestry, who had previously resided in New England or New York, although some came directly from England or Scotland.
Toward the end of the period, some Irish, utilized in part to construct the Ohio and Erie Canal, and a few Germans, usually farmers with a previous American residence, came to the region.
Following the completion of the canal in 1832, and of a rail network in the 1850s, the area's economic potential grew, particularly in mercantile endeavors, and it became more attractive to migrating groups. Most immigrants from 1830 to 1870 came from the German states, Great Britain, and, particularly, Ireland, with the city attracting substantial representation from each of these groups in doing so. It reflected national trends that saw the German and Irish populations of many major cities grow.
The most substantial and diverse migration to Cleveland occurred from 1870 to 1914, the period of the new immigration, in which many Southern and Eastern Europeans came to the U.S. This large exodus was fostered by shortages of land in the home countries, more liberal immigration policies, increased military conscription, and, particularly for the Jews, persecutions.
Pogroms against Jews living in the Pale of Settlement of the Russian Empire occasioned an immigration that vastly increased the Jewish settlement of cities such as Cleveland after the 1880s.
The entire process was facilitated by the development of relatively cheap, regular ocean transport.
As this coincided with the tremendous post-Civil War expansion of Cleveland's industrial base, the city received large numbers of Italians, Austro-Hungarians, and Russians. The influx was so great that by 1874, the city stationed members of the police force, designated as emigrant officers, at its various railroad stations to count and assist new arrivals in the city.
However, while these groups represented a new source of population, immigration from the older sources continued unabated. Indeed, until 1893 more Germans arrived annually in Cleveland than did any other national group. By 1900 the city's German population of 40,648 was larger than that of any other foreign-born community. Because Cleveland's industries expanded at a slightly later date than those in Chicago or Detroit, it received its infusion of new immigrants somewhat later than those cities.
For instance, the Polish communities in Chicago and Detroit had already established basic institutions such as churches and benefit organizations in the 1870s, while Cleveland's Polish community was still in a nascent state.
While the city's representation of immigrants from these new sources parallels that in other cities, several groups did come to Cleveland in extraordinarily large concentrations, most prominently the Slovenes and Slovaks.
The most substantial and diverse migration to Cleveland occurred from 1870 to 1914, the period of the new immigration, in which many Southern and Eastern Europeans came to the U.S. This large exodus was fostered by shortages of land in the home countries, more liberal immigration policies, increased military conscription, and, particularly for the Jews, persecutions. Pogroms against Jews living in the Pale of Settlement of the Russian Empire occasioned an emigration that vastly increased the Jewish settlements of cities such as Cleveland after the 1880s.
This large exodus was fostered by shortages of land in the home countries, more liberal immigration policies, increased military conscription, and, particularly for the Jews, persecutions. As this coincided with the tremendous post-Civil War expansion of Cleveland's industrial base, the city received large numbers of Italians, Austro-Hungarians, and Russians. The influx was so great that by 1874, the city stationed members of the police force, designated as emigrant officers, at its various railroad stations to count and assist new arrivals in the city. However, while these groups represented a new source of population, immigration from the older sources continued unabated. The city was a center for the National Progressive Movement, headed locally by Mayor Tom L. Johnson. Many Clevelanders of this era are buried in the historic Lakeview Cemetery, along with James Garfield, the 20th U.S. President.
In 1890, the monument to Garfield was formally dedicated. President Benjamin Harrison, Vice President L.P. Morton, and a host of other celebrities were present. The ceremonies were held in Lakeview Cemetery.
In commemoration of the centennial of Cleveland's incorporation as a city, The Great Lakes Exposition debuted in June 1936 along the Lake Erie shore north of downtown.
Conceived as a way to energize a city hit hard by the Great Depression, it drew 4 million visitors in its first season, and 7 million by the end of its second and final season in September 1937. This is the Sherwin-Williams Plaza at the Great Lakes Exposition of 1937.
The exposition was housed on grounds that are now used by the Great Lakes Science Center, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and Burke Lakefront Airport, among others. This is the May Company's store on Public Square in 1941.
Immediately after World War II, the city experienced a brief boom in sports. The Indians won the 1948 World Series, and the Browns dominated professional football in the 1950s.
This is Progressive Field, the new home of the Cleveland Indians. This is Browns Stadium in Cleveland.
Businesses proclaimed that Cleveland was the best location in the nation. The city's population reached its peak of 914,808. And in 1949 Cleveland was named an All-America City for the first time.
By the 1960s, however, heavy industries began to slump, and residents sought new housing in the suburbs, reflecting the national trends of white flight and urban sprawl.
Like other major American cities, Cleveland also began witnessing racial unrest, culminating in the Huff Riots in 1966 and the Glenville Shootout in 1968.
The city's navy is often considered to be its default on its loans on December 15, 1978. When under Mayor Dennis Kucinich it became the first major American city to enter default since the Great Depression.
National media began referring to Cleveland as the mistake on the lake around this time of the city's financial difficulties. A notorious 1969 fire on the Cuyahoga River, where industrial waste on the river's surface caught on fire, and its struggling professional sports teams. Cleveland has worked to shed this nickname ever since, though in recent times the national media have been much kinder to the city, using it as an exemplar for public-private partnerships, downtown revitalization, and urban renaissance.
The metropolitan area began recovery thereafter under mayors George Voinovich and Michael R. White. Redevelopment within the city limits has been strongest in the downtown area near the Gateway Complex, consisting of Progressive Field and Quicken Loans Arena. Chapter 5. North Coast Harbor.
And near the North Coast Harbor, including the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Cleveland Browns Stadium, and the Great Lakes Science Center.
An inlet of Lake Erie, North Coast Harbor was created in the 1980s as a public waterfront park, and has since served as a focal point for museum developments throughout the 1990s.
Currently, the area is home to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Great Lakes Science Center, Steamship William G. Mather, and the Good Time 3 excursion ship. This is a map of Cleveland's North Coast Harbor.
This is another map of Cleveland's North Coast Harbor showing the Great Lakes Science Center, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and the SS William G. Mather.
This is a view of Cleveland's North Coast harbors showing the Great Lakes Science Center, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and the SS William G. Maffei. This is an author view of Cleveland's North Coast harbors showing the Great Lakes Science Center, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and the SS William G. Maffei.
Public Square is the central plaza in downtown Cleveland. It takes up 4 city blocks. Superior Avenue and Ontario Street cross through it.
This is the Cleveland Harbor area.
This is downtown Cleveland.
This is the Cleveland Harbor and downtown areas. This is a view of Cleveland and the Cuyahoga River.
The steamship William G. Mather is a retired Great Lakes bulk freighter, now restored as a maritime museum in Cleveland, one of 4 in the Great Lakes region. The Mather transported cargo such as ore, coal, stone, and grain to ports throughout the Great Lakes, and was nicknamed the ship that built Cleveland because Cleveland steel mills were a frequent destination. The Good Time 3 offers cruises on the Cuyahoga River and Lake Erie aboard Cleveland's largest sightseeing vessel. It is the largest quadruple-deck 1,000-passenger luxury ship on the Great Lakes, which offers plenty of room, and you are not confined to your seats.
Although Cleveland was hailed by the media as the comeback city, many of the inner-city residential neighborhoods remain troubled, and the public school system continues to experience serious problems.
Economic development, retention of young professionals, and capitalizing upon its waterfront are current municipal priorities. In 1999, Cleveland was identified as an emerging global city. This shows various points of interest in the downtown Cleveland area. This is the Terminal Tower Complex, with the Warehouse District, the Cuyahoga River, and Lake Erie in the background.
This is an aerial view of downtown Cleveland. This is a vintage photograph of the old Brown Stadium in downtown Cleveland.
The Terminal Tower, dedicated in 1930, was the tallest building in North America outside New York City until 1967, and the tallest in the city until 1991.
The Terminal Tower is a prototypical Beaux-Arts skyscraper.
This is a Ohio map of Cleveland.
The Kitawee is a skyscraper on Public Square in downtown Cleveland, Ohio, designed by architect Sapelli. It is the tallest building in both the city of Cleveland and the state of Ohio.
Key Tower is the 18th tallest building in the United States and the 55th tallest building in the world. The top of the spire is the highest point in the state of Ohio. The BP Tower, also known as the Ohio Building, Standard Oil Building, the BP America Building, BP America Tower, 200 Public Square, or the BP Building, is the 3rd tallest skyscraper in Cleveland. The BP Tower, located on Public Square in downtown Cleveland, reaches 45 stories and 658 feet, 201 meters, and holds 1.2 million square feet, 111,000 cubic meters, of office space.
Chapter 6. Euclid Avenue. Running east from Public Square through University Circle is Euclid Avenue. which was known for its prestige and elegance in the late 1880s. Writer Bayard Taylor described it as the most beautiful street in the world. Known as Millionaire's Row, Euclid Avenue was world-renowned as the home of such internationally known names as Rockefeller, Hanna, and Hay. At the turn of the century, Euclid Avenue was internationally known. Baedeker's travel guides called the elm-lined avenue the showplace of America, and designated it as a must-see for travelers from Europe.
The concentration of wealth was unparalleled, and the tax valuation of the mansions along the avenue far exceeded the valuation of New York's Fifth Avenue in the late 19th century.
This is Samuel Andrews's mansion, also called Andrews's Folly, located on Euclid Avenue, circa 1890. In 1914, the American Traffic Signal Company installed a traffic signal system on the corner of East 105th Street and Euclid Avenue. This was the first traffic light installed in the United States. The Playhouse Square Center, in downtown Cleveland, is the second largest theater complex in the United States, second only to New York City's Lincoln Center.
The renovation and reopening of the theater complex helped usher in a new era of downtown revitalization in Cleveland, and was called one of the top 10 successes in Cleveland history.
This is a satellite photograph of Cleveland and its suburbs.
The Drew Carey Show is a sitcom set in Cleveland that aired on ABC from 1995 to 2004 and was known for its everyman characters and themes.
Cleveland was the home of Joe Shuster and Jerry Siegel, who created the comic book character Superman in 1932.
Both attended Glenville High School, and their early collaborations resulted in the creation of the Man of Steel. University Circle.
5 miles, 8 kilometers, east of downtown Cleveland is University Circle, a 550-acre, 2.2 square kilometers, concentration of cultural, educational, and medical institutions, including the Cleveland Botanical Garden, Case Western Reserve University, University Hospitals, Severance Hall, the Cleveland Museum of Art, the Cleveland Museum of Natural History, and the Western Reserve Historical Society.
This is a map of the University Circle area. Severance Hall is a concert hall located in the University Circle district of Cleveland. The hall has been the home of the Cleveland Orchestra since its opening in 1931.
Chapter 7. The Economy of Cleveland.
Cleveland's location on the Cuyahoga River and Lake Erie has been key to its growth. The Ohio Erie Canal coupled with rail links helped establish the city as a major American manufacturing center.
Steel and many other manufactured goods emerged as Cleveland's major industries.
This is an aerial view of the Fisher Body plant on Coit Road, circa 1949.
Cleveland has sought to diversify its economy to become less dependent on its struggling manufacturing sector. Cleveland is the corporate headquarters of many large companies such as the Eaton Corporation, National City Corporation, American Greetings, Forest City Enterprises, Sherwin-Williams Company, Key Corp, Parker Hannifin Corporation, Progressive Auto Insurance, Travel Centers of America, and Alaris International.
NASA maintains a facility in Cleveland, the Glenn Research Center. Glenn Research Center is a NASA research center whose primary mission is to develop science and technology for use in aeronautics and space.
Cleveland's largest employer, the Cleveland Clinic, ranks among America's best hospitals as tabulated by U.S. News & World Report.
Cleveland's healthcare industry includes University Hospitals of Cleveland, a noted competitor which ranked 25th in cancer care, and Metro Health Medical Center. The Cleveland Clinic disaster, also known as the Clinic Fire, occurred in 1929 and cost the lives of 123 people, but stimulated the development and enforcement of safety regulations in U.S. hospitals.
Dr. John Phillips, a founder of the Cleveland Clinic and head of the medical department, died as a result of toxic gas inhalation.
These are patrons at Euclid Beach Park in the 1940s.
These are county engineering employees searching through the wreckage of the East Ohio Gas Company explosion in 1944. The East Ohio Gas Company explosion and fire took place on Friday, October 20, 1944. When a tank containing liquid natural gas equivalent to 90 million cubic feet exploded, setting off the most disastrous fire in Cleveland's history. Homes and businesses were engulfed by a tidal wave of fire in more than 1 square mile of Cleveland's east side. Cleveland is home to several colleges and universities. Most prominent among these is Case Western Reserve University, a world-renowned research and teaching institution located in University Circle.
Case Western Reserve University is a private university with several prominent graduate programs. Case was ranked 38th in the nation in 2007 by U.S. News & World Report.
This is Case Hall as it appeared in the early 1900s.
The largest university in the Cleveland area is Cleveland State University, CSU, a public research university that opened for classes in 1965. It is part of the University System of Ohio and has over 15,000 students. The Port of Cleveland is a bulk freight shipping port at the mouth of the Cuyahoga River on Lake Erie.
The Port of Cleveland is the third largest port in the Great Lakes and the fourth largest Great Lakes port by annual tonnage.
This is the Port of Cleveland from Lake Erie.
This again is the Port of Cleveland from Lake Erie.
Recommended videos, Cleveland.
Recommended video, Cleveland, Ohio. Top 10 attractions. Recommended video, 5 top-rated tourist attractions in Cleveland, Ohio.
Recommended video, The Early History of Cleveland, Ohio.
Recommended video, Cleveland's Millionaires Row.
Table of Contents, Cleveland.
Thanks for watching. Please watch some more of my great videos.